I think in the US, we have skewed towards like extremisms, you know? In AI, you're either a doomer or like an EGA peel, and like you're building God or you're building like Terminator. There's nothing in between. My impression of Japan is that it's a bit more of a moderated culture. And I think in the stage of AI that we're in right now is that behavior might just incentivize more usage because you're not, you know, going to the extremes. And so you're much more moderated on what works and what doesn't.
Chris, welcome to the Coral Capital podcast and welcome back to Japan.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. Very happy to be back.
Yeah, of course. So I don't know how much of the area you got to walk around before walking into this bar, but I thought given Runway's kind of start and history, we would film at a sci-fi bar. So we're in an area called Kanda, and it's essentially like one stop north of Tokyo Station. It's like this very grungy, maybe grimy is a better word, but like salaryman drinking spot in Tokyo.
This looks amazing, by the way. I see so many of the greatest films that I enjoy watching and so many like objects. It's just like a really nice place. Thank you for picking this.
Yeah, of course. I think these are all like titled, the names of the drinks are all titles of movies, or I guess like movie filmed stuff. I might do the light side.
Well, if you're doing the light side, I'll do the dark side.
Okay, we'll balance it out. ライトサイドとダークサイドをお願いします。So anyways, I feel like we actually had a chance to chat maybe like 3 years ago when you guys were part of our Startup Aquarium event. But since then, the company's evolved quite a bit too. So for those who are less familiar, like I would love to start by, you know, who are you, Chris? And like, what does Runway do?
Yeah, totally. And by the way, 3 years in AI feels like 100 years now.
Oh my God, yes.
It's a lot.
Every week is like boom, boom.
Yeah, every week feels like a year now. I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Runway. We started Runway, you know, almost 8 years ago. And the core idea back then was still pretty much the same that we have right now, which is how do you use AI to generate anything you want? And so when we started thinking about this, me and my co-founders back then, we started really thinking about, you know, the research and the scope and how we could build this. And it all was partially and mostly motivated by our own personal interests. We were coming from a creative background. I grew up in Chile and I came to New York to study kind of art because I thought I wanted to be an artist.
Right, you went to like NYU.
I went to NYU, of course. And that's where I met Alejandro and Anastasis, my co-founders. And I think for a lot of time we thought we wanted to be artists or filmmakers or creatives, but we're also engineers. And it was like a mixture of things. And in a way, I think Runway is a representation of those two worlds, the world of art and science. And so for the last 8 years, we've been just trying to merge those two things together. How to do great art and how do you do great science?
I feel like from doing that, like my impression of Runway when I first heard about the company, like, gosh, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, was like you guys are very close to the film industry. You guys build very closely with the creators. ありがとうございます。はい。こちらのダークサイドになりますね。ありがとうございます。I guess we will cheers.
Yeah, cheers. For the light side and the dark side.
Yeah. Oh, wow, there's like a whole, is this Star Wars?
Lightsaber, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Boom.
You're the Jedi, I'm the...
This is very cute. But no, like my impression and like image of the company, I guess, is like it works so closely within the creative industry. And film is like a big part of it, right? Like you guys were a big part of Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? When like AI was starting to pick up more hype, or like generative AI was. And you guys run like the AI festivals and whatnot. And I know that's still very central to like how the company runs and like the tech that you guys built. But at the same time, it sounds like you guys have also expanded to be more like enterprise focused as well as doing things within world models. So I'm kind of curious, like, how does that transition look like internally? And like, how's the company like evolving? Yeah.
I think more than a transition is like a natural evolution of scale. You're right. The company started, like, we started in prehistoric times of AI. I mean, I remember like we didn't even call it AI. We used to call it ML, machine learning. And over the last 9 and 8 years, we've been consistently building more and more things. And as you build more things, you start expanding the ambition of the company. Because early on, a lot of the insights that we had was like, well, a lot of the ideas that we have could be applicable in very specific kind of use cases and niche kind of examples, or and the audiences and users were still very small and experimental. And as you start making things that are more practical and more usable, you start just moving through like a larger audience and a user base.
Right.
But the one thing that I think we've never lost is, that soul and that core DNA of how we go through building products and how we do also research. And it's kind of what I was mentioning before, that how do you have a good understanding of what we're trying to do. In our case, when we started, it was a lot about creatives and artists and filmmakers. And if you just fundamentally don't understand the craft and what it takes to make great stories, then it's going to be hard for you to create technologies that can help that.
Right.
And so a lot of the initial pool and use cases and some of the greatest filmmakers who started to use Runway even like 5-6 years ago were mostly coming from friends, with people we know about. It was almost like an insider thing that people started to understand how you could use Runway in all sorts of different ways. And that kind of grew on its own slowly and more until you get to a point where not only great filmmakers are using Runway, but great brands and great companies and great e-commerce sites, and now architects use Runway, and a wide variety of people that you might not consider necessarily like film or creatives, but it's kind of like a side effect of solving for that in the first place. And so the company has been in a natural, I would say, evolution over time. I tell everyone at some point in the company that really our goal is to have a different company and change every 4 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't fundamentally change the company every 6 months, I think you're in stasis mode. You're not,
especially in this age.
Correct. And it almost feels like I should update that to maybe 2 to 3 months. I think it's a operating mode. Consistently reinventing yourself and trying to understand how do you keep on growing and scaling at a very high pace has been kind of our mentality over the last couple of years.
Yeah, makes sense. And I would assume that when you start by building for creators and being in an industry that requires such a high requirement in terms of like quality, that building for like enterprises or building for other industries might even be like easier or like actually better, like kind of flywheel effect that you have there. I know last December you guys released pretty much like a family of different models. Can you talk a little bit about like GWM1 and like some of the work that you guys were doing there?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we're doing on world models stems from our work on video models. And as you said, we had a high bar for what video models could achieve, because you're serving, on the one end, the very high-end spectrum of creatives. And those people are obsessed with pixels and with the precision that perhaps 99% of the world doesn't care. So to your point, if you couldn't solve for the 1%, if I can solve for the greatest filmmaker, then you could probably solve for everyone else that's not trying to be a great filmmaker. And the technologies can serve kind of both use cases.
Right.
And one thing we're going to start realizing is, as you start creating these better and larger and bigger video models, these models eventually become much more than just pixel generators. They are naturally encoding and understanding the dynamics of the world. And so you're going to start understanding that these video models eventually become what we call now world models. And world models have, a much larger and wider set of applications than video models have, because they're naturally simulating our world, our universe in a way. And a lot of what we're doing now is, understanding what those opportunities are. Building the kind of models that we have it's hard, it's really expensive, it takes a lot of time, and there are only a couple of companies who've done it really well. And we're very fortunate to be in that position where we can train these very large models and start thinking about all the possible verticals in which we can deploy them. Of course, creative still is one of those, where world models are becoming the core fundamental way you will make and continue to make a lot of content. But at the same time, we're now, spending a lot of time in robotics, where one of the fundamental pieces that's missing these days on research and progress in robotics is, how do you make sure that the autonomous systems that you're building have a great policy or a great way of understanding and moving in unstructured environments? And most of the solutions that people are using these days is a combination of like language models with computer vision. So you have VLAs, we're taking a different approach.
I feel like at some point VLAs was, I mean, it's still, a lot of robotics companies uses that. And it felt like initially like, okay, wow, this might be working. And then my sense is that the industry has shifted towards, okay, maybe VLA isn't actually as scalable. It's extremely difficult to scale, like getting all of that teleoperate,
It is.
like data and whatnot. But I'm curious, like, how do you obviously work in the video part of video generation?
It is definitely like difficult to scale. I think not only the data part is hard, but it's also expensive. It's kind of you're piecing together things that were not meant to like be pieced together, and you're just like stitching them, and it kind of works. But I think the approach with world action models and models that can more naturally understand the world and the physics behind it, have already proven to be much more successful, specifically unstructured kind of environments. So I think robotic systems are really, reliable these days, and you have like consistent, patterns or consistent tasks and objectives that you have to do. But the truth is that the world at large is very chaotic, and so if you remove any structure from what you know, it becomes much harder because the model needs to generalize. It needs to understand, well, there's a new object that I've never seen before. How do I make sense of that? And that's where all the knowledge that video models have seen and have managed to encode via learning through the videos that we're training for has that kind of learned representation. And so translating that into the policy of the robotic systems has proven to be extremely successful. And look, it's still early. Like a lot of this large video models that we're now calling world models just weren't around like a year ago.
Right.
I think that's the other thing that I keep like reminding people is, I mean, the whole field of deep learning really exploded, 4 or 5 years ago? Like the whole field of video generation and world models only exploded like 2 years ago. And so we're in that very early stages. It might feel that it's been around forever, but it's not. And if you keep progressing, you'll keep seeing more things you can do. And so for us, it's about, what else can this amazing sort of like simulation engines can do besides entertainment, and robotics is clearly one of those.
Right. From your perspective, what are some of like the next unlocks that you would like to see video generated like world models unlock? Like what are some of the, I don't know if milestones is the right word, but
yeah. So I think there are two parts. One is how do you make sure that you have continuous deployments in the real world that help you inform how to improve the models? And to have continuous deployments, there's two things I think you need to fix or you need to have. One, it needs to be cost effective. And so I can create an amazing set of incredibly powerful video models and world models, but they're extremely expensive to use. Then it will be very hard for me to test them. And I think this happens in like other modalities as well. You can create amazing language models, but if the token consumption per like input is extremely expensive, then it will be very hard to just test it at scale.
Right.
I think for us it's similar. Is what's that price kind of threshold that we need to make sure we have? And the other one is speed. You need to make sure that these models are fast and they can run ideally in real time. And so what you want to get to a point is where you can create or generate videos either for entertainment, for the videos that you want to watch, the videos about the movies that we like. That's the kind of videos that humans want to watch. But you could also create the videos that robots want to watch, which are not necessarily entertainment. They're just like either for learning or for moving in the world. But both of them need to be significantly fast. Because if they're fast, then you can have much more feedback loops in how you use them. And so for us, those are probably like a good set of milestones that I want to make sure we can solve over the next couple of months.
Makes sense. I want to talk about Japan too, because of course you're in Tokyo for a reason. And I think it was in May, you guys announced that you're expanding into the Japan market and committed $40 million to accelerate here. What was the decision behind that? Was it organic pull that you were sensing? What's the story behind the timing?
Yeah. I think it was one of those things that we were like kept thinking about forever, but never really like executed on.
What was stopping you? Was it just being harder to navigate? Or
it's mostly like size of the team. Like, one of the key things about Runway is that we've been historically a very small team. Like, I mean, very small. And it's been by design because it helped us just move extremely fast.
How big is it now, by the way?
So I would say for most of our existence, the company has been less than 100 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very small.
It's very lean.
And now we're like closer to 200. So
Still very lean though, for the number of years.
No. So we're doubling now and probably going to continue doubling over the next couple of months. So the team is growing very fast. But having a lean team allows you to, be very, you have to always like obsess around prioritization. What's the most important thing and how do you move fast enough? Yeah. But now that we managed to like hire more people, we can do more things. And one of the things we really wanted to spend more time on is our international presence. And our biggest markets are the US, Europe, and Asia, specifically Japan.
Where would Japan like rank in terms of?
It's the third
biggest.
Yes. And so, and the tricky part about Japan, I've never been here. The first time I was here was 2 months ago when we met. The tricky part about Japan is I kept hearing that, if you wanted to work with customers in Japan and companies in Japan, you have to have an office in Japan and you have to have a country manager and spend like years like nurturing the relationships. And I kept hearing that from like best practices of like, if you speak with any country manager who's ever like deployed an enterprise motion in Japan, that's probably like the playbook. And I kept hearing that. It's like, it all makes sense, but we already have enterprise customers in Japan. So
is that organic?
Yes. And these are like MSSI, like enterprise, like agreed and like working relationships with major companies. And it kind of didn't make sense. Why? Everyone told me it shouldn't happen, but it's happening. It's great for us.
Yeah. Do you think it's because Runway was also servicing prosumers? You think that you captured organically prosumers within Japan and that maybe like circled into getting
correct
bigger? Okay.
I think that was pretty much what's going on. I think so the Runway has been for so long in the market, and we've kind of created a category in a way. There's a lot of creatives within many different industries that know about us. Yeah. And many of them have used Runway for years or know about us for years. And most of them also work in great companies. And so when, the models became better and adoption became much more commonplace, many of them started to just bring Runway to their companies. And there's nothing better than having that like bottom-up momentum in a company. And so many of the deals that we closed were just bottom-up kind of growth. Right. And so what I wanted to do when I first came here was like, well, to meet many of those customers and those users. And so we had a few like community events, and we have hundreds of people show up with a lot of love for Runway and just like very organic appreciation for what we're doing. And many of them actually were work at agencies or work at production companies, and they were using Runway now because we signed an enterprise deal with their boss. And so now there's a little bit of like this hamburger kind of approach where a lot of the growth seems from like the bottom, and then on the top you can like squish it together. And
yeah, and that actually works the best in Japan, I think, because Japan actually, I think culturally we're pretty techno-optimists. Yes. So like on a consumer, people talk about how enterprises can be slow, yada, yada, yada. But like on the consumer front, like people are very quick to adopt. Yeah. And once they love a product, they're talking about it on X, they're talking about it, to their colleagues. And you kind of see this like natural evolution of people like selling your product and like marketing it within the community.
I agree.
And then if you're able to, go top to bottom to be able to like implement that.
Yeah, and they're very practical as well. I don't know if you saw, there's a graph on Twitter that was going around a couple of weeks ago. Yes, I posted about it.
I did see that.
Yeah, it was like the usage of AI comparing different countries in Japan, I think is like 2 to 3 times like larger than everyone else is.
Which even for me, that was actually pretty surprising. But via Runway, do you see that as well?
Yeah, we see that. Of course, yeah. And I was asking a couple of people, why, and specifically within companies, it feels like there's much more pull and willingness to try. And maybe your point, Japan is a very techno-optimist country. Like technology is everywhere, much more than in the US. So you go to a convenience store, it's way more automated than any other place. And maybe it's out of necessity, aging population, you need better ways of and relating with technology. But I feel also part of my hypothesis is that I think in the US, like socially, we have skewed towards like extremisms, In AI, you're either a doomer or like an EGIPL, and like there's nothing else in between. And like either
it's always two extremes in the US.
Right. Either we're gonna like all die, and we're gonna like find nirvana and we're gonna go to heaven, right? It's like you're building God or you're building like Terminator. There's nothing in between. But my impression of like Japan is that it's a bit more of a moderated like culture, where you're much more pragmatic. You're like, it kind of works. So why are you like going to the extremes? Like just start working what works.
Yeah.
And I think in the stage of AI that we're right now is that behavior might just incentivize more usage because you're not, going to the extremes. And so you're much more moderated on what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time in SF now and I just got back from there too. But to the point that you were making, like in SF, I feel like there's a lot of sensitivity around AI, humanoids, automation, and there's a lot of fear about what that's going to do for the economy and like job loss. And then in Japan, it's like, well, one, labor protection laws are pretty strong here. And two, we have a very acute labor shortage issue where it's like aging population, people are not having enough children, unfortunately. And also it's like we live, similar to this bar, like people grew up kind of watching robots and technology through film and kind of content industry. So I think we're a lot more open to it. So it's so interesting to see the contrast within the two regions of how people are perceiving like AI and like how open arms people are here about it.
And by the way, San Francisco is great. I mean, I love the city. We have an office there. We're a great team. But it's also, I mean, everyone knows it's a small bubble of sorts. And the representation of it sometimes gets too influenced in how general perception of AI feels around the world. But I think San Francisco is not a fair representation of like
what are people in Montana saying?
Correct. Yeah, why not? Or here, what people in Japan saying,
Yeah. So in terms of Japanese users, whether it's prosumers or enterprise, like what exactly are some of the unique use cases you're seeing? Or like, oh, well, people here are using it for like X, Y, and Z use cases versus we never see that here.
So the most interesting thing is that when you say that, there's a big part of our audience and users that are creatives, I think people tend to think about creatives as artists. And this happens to me as well. Like when I say I went to art school, people think I went to like painting school, And I think creativity is a state of mind. Creativity is a way of looking at the world. I had a meeting back then early on with one of the biggest like architect firms in the US. And I was telling them that a lot of our use cases are like on film and creative, on storytelling. So I wasn't sure how much of that would apply to them. And the head of the studio just stops me and he's like, no, you don't understand. I'm a storyteller. I said, what do you mean? Well, if you think about the job of an architect, like 90% of their time is just spent on pitching clients, like projects they want to build or like commissions they've gotten and the idea of the project behind it. Before you ever get to build something, you have to pitch and you have to win the project in the first place. And most of that is just storytelling. You're telling a story about the materials, the location, the shape, the structure of the building or the project you're building. And so they now, this firm called KPF, now uses Runway almost on a daily basis to tell their stories. And it's not the typical like story that you might think of a creative could do at Runway, but for them it's like extremely well, design as a solution and software that helps them like achieve what it is, which is just tell a story. And so that form of storytelling now permeates, of course, like entertainment and film and Hollywood, but now architects and brands and like e-commerce sites. We work like fintech.
Right.
We work with like all these other like long tail of examples where creativity is embedded in your work, but you have never thought of yourself as a creative person necessarily. And that's for me at last, like, there's so much growth potential in so many of the use cases that we're just like scratching the surface of.
I'm sure this list has changed and expanded quite a bit, but I know some of the initial customers that you guys had in Japan was like Yamaha and Motor,
Correct.
SoftBank, NHN, Mixed is like a partnership that you guys announced.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about like how different products or models within Runway is being used and like what the partnerships look like?
Yeah, so a lot of those use cases are stemming from our core product, and our core product has like two main kind of functions. One is like what we call the platform. So platform allows you to create a lot of content at scale. So if you're Mixi or you're the marketing team inside Yamaha, you can basically do things that would require you many hours and many thousands of dollars to do before, now in fully automated ways. And so it's mostly a cost-effective way of just making the same things you were doing before, but much more rapidly. And then we have, that's kind of one mechanism of where we work with many of those customers. The other one is a bit more like deep, which involves working together with you to create either fine-tuned versions of models or create much more specific tools for what you're trying to achieve. And so we have a motion where we send engineers to your company or creatives to your company, and we co-build things that are specific to kind of your business need. And that's more of a partnership approach where in some cases you might give us data that we get used to train our models. And you can use that model for your own kind of production, or maybe we can use that data to train our base model as well. And so it depends. There's no one size fits all, but in general, it's using this platform as the entry point, and then just selling through traditional enterprise motion or a much more deeper partnership.
Right. Is there a difference in between, like in Japan, there's more of like the, very hands-on kind of integrated model versus platform, or?
I think in Japan, maybe we were speaking before, I think there's a little more in Japan of the prosumer approach of like platform approach is just use it and you start scaling from that. The reason we're here, I'm spending so much time here, is that there's so much potential for the second one, which is now companies and customers getting much more comfortable with either licensing data or giving it access to data and training on models. But then you get into like, well, we need compute, you need like to invest more. And so we're now having conversations at much more deeper levels of, well, this is not only another software stack, which is something you probably have heard or you will see a lot from AI companies, is that this is not SaaS anymore. I think when you buy traditional SaaS, no one at the executive level will ever get involved. You think about any like Yamaha or any of the largest companies we work with, all of the deals are done at a like very top-down on bottom-ups approach. You need like, we're building a relationship and a strategic like alignment to make sure that the company can redesign itself in this like new AI era. And so everyone has to be on board of like, okay, we're going to stop making, marketing videos the way we used to make them. We're going to redesign who we hire, how we optimize for this. I'm going to save ourselves 80% of the cost. That's a fundamental management change kind of like thing you have to do.
Right.
SaaS was not about that. SaaS was like, traditional SaaS was like, it's just like, you buy the CRM. Correct. You buy a CRM and like a recruiting software, and like someone in some department approved it. There's a budget and procurement, and like, it's fine. You just how it works. But now you're buying technology that like changes the organization. And so it's much more deeper, the kind of relationship you have to build with people. And I think trust is one of those key things. If you're one of those organizations and companies and you've decided you want to change and you want to prepare yourself for what's next, you want to have someone who you can trust. And that's why we get a chance of working with a lot of great companies.
That's great. On the topic of trust, like Japan obviously has like a very deep pool for like creativity and IP and content, whether it's across anime, manga, gaming, etc. And I think the government even specified that content was going to be a like key economic pillar, and we're going to have aggressive kind of like export goals to meet, etc. But at the same time, like Japanese people are very particular about their craftsmanship and about like protecting kind of the art. And like my sense is that actually compared to the US, which is all about, I'm kind of stereotyping here, but like all about like commercialization and monetizing things, Japan's very much more about like, oh, this is the art. And like if people want to appreciate it, like they want people to appreciate it, but otherwise like they're not that commercially minded. Anyways, but I'm curious, like, especially with a market like Japan, is there friction that you see in terms of the traditional like art kind of industry and how receptive they are to AI and technology? I mean, it sounds like they're very receptive, but I'm curious, like, are there like different verticals or folks that you've felt like, okay, there's a little bit more pushback here?
So, I mean, two things come to mind. The first one is I think this is not a zero-sum game. So it's not about, well, we're going to like use all of it or not use all of it. I think as an artist, first of all, you can choose whatever you want to do. So there's no one is forcing you to use anything, right? So this is where like maybe looking back at the history of art can help us inform, what's coming next. Where when photography was kind of around at the beginning of the 1900s, the sentiment was like you will never have to paint again, because why would you paint if just you can capture like the world via this new technology called photography.
Right.
And so there was a sense of impending doom in like artists at the time that most of them were painters or sculptors. And the reality is that painting didn't die. On the contrary, I think photography free painting from a lot of this representational kind of like nature it had to do, which is you have to do portraits of people now. You don't do portraits, you just go outside and paint the sun. and subtle impressionism was born. There are all these like consequences that are unintended because of technology and because of it not being seen as a zero-sum game. And the second thing I'd say is, in the industries, in the creative industries, like Hollywood now is fully on board. Like this is now not a taboo anymore. Every studio is using AI.
When did that switch happen, do you
I
think?
think over the last year and a half. That is like that's a fact. Like all of them are using it some way or the other. But the narrative still hasn't caught up to that. And there's a lot of narratives in AI these days that are more fiction than fact. Like the water consumption like narrative for me is like, sounds like a great narrative of like data centers, eating the water of the world, which it's like not really true, but like no one has checked the facts. Some people have, of course. And I think for me on the creative AI pushback, there's a little bit of that where like most people have already like move on and understand it and are using it and are very much on board. And maybe some people have not, but the narrative and the story out there hasn't yet updated itself. And I think it's normal. I mean, it's been around for like 2 years, 3 years, like we're gonna get there at some point. And so I kind of like maybe I question the premise of the question in the first place, which is I think most creatives out there have already understood it or embraced it or are using it somehow or some way. And everyone else at some point will. That's fine. That's my thesis.
I see. On the flip side of things, outside of even just content, I feel like Japan's obviously a very big market for like OEM, robotics, and for the world model side of AI or for Runway. I think it's a very interesting market for you guys to come into. But what do you think the advantages are there? What are some of the things that you're working on with Japanese companies when it comes to the GWM1 and?
So one of the things that we want to make sure that we can do as we start thinking about GWM1s and of course GWM2 and 3 and all the next versions of models is deployments in actual like working industries. I think there's a lot of great neo labs that are doing great research on robotics, but benchmarks are not really at a point where you can know what's working out there. Like evals on LLMs and on video and other domains have been really like tested out.
Right.
And people know, there's a new model almost every hour now, and everyone knows where it ranks. But
it's also constantly changing.
I know.
It's like,
there's a lot going on. But on the robotics side, there's not really a lot. So I think people don't really know how everyone else is performing. And I think part of that is there's a clear way of like measuring performance, which is like, are you working in the real world? Are you doing something? Is there a task you've solved for a manufacturing company? And I think what better grounding task to have that real world deployment than like one of the countries that has the highest like automation rate and probably the largest amount of investment in like doing more because of the facts you mentioned. Like, and I think that's for us like a key component of building more of a presence here is there's a lot of money being invested in hardware, building more factories, building more robots on the add-ons itself. But there's still not a lot invested in like the bits of how these robots are going to work. What are the brains of a robot? And we really are convinced that world action models and world models are going to be the next frontier for that. So spending a lot of time on deployment more than anything else.
I know the other thing that's brought up pretty frequently on the technology front of like world models or just like physical AI, generally speaking, is like the sim to real gap. How do you see that trending? Like, is it shrinking? Yeah. What's your view on that?
I mean, world models that are kind of evolving from video are, again, only a couple months old. And so the ability to do like, even sim to sim, where you can run entire simulations and then test the efficacy of your, like the policy in a simulated environment as well. Those are all like things that are just happening now. I think a lot of it will be depending on, scaling laws for video and scaling just generally will still continue to be true. And so then you need more compute, you need better data,
right?
You need better grounded data, you need just more ways of testing as well. So we're now in our New York office, we have a couple of robots and we have a whole team just dedicated on using those robots. We have a couple of Franca robots and a couple of like arms that are just trying all the time how good the policies are. We can also simulate on video data, which is kind of interesting. So you can can only do the policy kind of system with a world model. You can also do the policy evaluation component of it, which is how good and how effective the policy is. Can also happen on a video model. So ideally, when I get to just like sim to sim inside a video model itself.
I know you guys are hiring in Japan too for a country manager. Is that role still open?
It is, yeah, of course.
And what kind of person would be ideal? Yeah.
Look, I think more than anything else, I think it's someone who deeply understands what we're building. Given how much we've grown with kind of none of the traditional recommendations, we need people who are like very much first principle thinkers. Why things are done in one particular way, but that's generally a recommendation. Given how much both AI is changing and how companies are changing, what else can you do that's a bit different from everyone else?
Right.
And of course, there's best practices you can take and learn from, but we need people who are very good at like kind of some sort of like situational awareness of like understand where you are, understand the context, and then just build on your own.
So would you want that person to be fairly technical?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Like folks that are good engineers, have a work engineer backgrounds, are very analytical, but also, I mean, just great working with companies. I think specifically, I think I have so much time and I met so many amazing executives and creatives inside companies. And I got a sense how much people deeply respect, your partner and your relationship as a business person. I think the US is a little bit less of that. It's a bit more transactional.
Right.
I think here is a bit more, I'm going to actually like listen to you. I'm going to actually like follow up with what I say I was going to follow up. In the US, it's like, I'm going to follow up. It's like, you don't follow up and no one cares.
Right. It's very salesy.
Yeah, it's a very salesy, I think. But that comes back to my maybe Chilean Latin roots. I think it's similar in a way. Like you have to, I think philosophically in Runway we also have it, which is one of our core values is you have to care about what you do. Like if you don't care fundamentally about what you do, then you're not gonna put the hard work in it, and you're not gonna see it as like a significant part of your life. I get that more of here where like people really care about what they do.
Right.
Yeah, so we need someone who really cares about what they do.
And the $40 million that you committed here, like how big are you planning to make the team in Japan, let's say in like the next, 1 or 2 years? And what does the resource kind of split look like between, because I do feel like there's so much opportunity both on the creative side, whether it's like marketing, enterprise, but also the physical AI world side of things. Japan's a great market for both. So
yeah, I mean, we need both. So the verticals, as you said, were more on the creative, like content side and like physical AI, and a lot of it has to do, like those are two different types of people you're gonna hire for. Ideally, we want to start with more go-to-market, more enterprise motion, and hopefully we'll get at some point we're gonna hire engineers and researchers as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But we're not hiring for those yet. I mean, we'll love to maybe spend more time there. And a lot of the dollars are going to be spent on, growing those two functions, finding the people, the marketing needed for like expanding the market itself, and then the inference costs that we're going to get deployed to just grow the markets. Hopefully we'll at some point have also more compute in the region, so you don't have to use like all the latency that's coming from the US here.
Right. And you said Runway, you try to think of the company as evolving like every 4 to 6 months and constantly changing. Yeah. But let's say 5 years from now, what do you hope like Runway will look like?
Actually, I more than like 4 to 6 months. Another analogy I've used a lot is I tend to think of Runway as a neural network itself, as a model itself. Like if you think what a model is, right? So a model is you're putting data and you're kind of adjusting the weights of the model, and then you're using that like learned representation to output something, right? And then as new data comes in, ideally you want to like do continuous learning, so the models can update itself all the time and change the outputs. Well, that's kind of a company, right? A company should work in that very similar way, where the neurons are just people, and there's data coming in that could be the market, research, the things you're doing. You're adjusting the weights of how you do things internally, and then you output things. And so I think more than the company needs to change every 4 to 6 months or in 5 years, it's more of this neural network has to just scale and grow and become more intelligent itself. So the company itself needs to be almost in continuous learning mode. Like you don't stop. It's like you're training and pre-training and post-training like the company all the time. And I think the moment, probably if you ask me like what's happening in like 5 years or how it changed in 5 years, this is I don't know. Like we'll see how intelligent this like organization can get. And if we're succeeding, then we're going to probably learn a lot more. And if we can learn a lot more, we can generalize to a lot of other things. And that's ideally where we'll see success. If we keep training this neural network in good ways.
With a company that's so agile, I would assume that like retention and keeping people motivated towards the same mission can also be quite difficult. How has that been for you?
It actually has been pretty good. We have like a really much higher retention than like normal like SaaS and AI labs. I think part of it is, well, it's kind of been, there's a good side and a bad side. The good side is that we've managed to retain and keep everyone like of the best performers and the best people in the team like for a long time. A lot of it is because we spend so much time hiring people that are philosophically aligned with the mission of the company. It's kind of what I mentioned before. You have to deeply care. If you don't care, it's just you're going to jump from company to company. No one cares. With people,
especially these days with the salaries. I mean, the talent wars is crazy.
But people just deeply care about the company. They're like deeply ingrained with the mission and the core fundamental values of how we operate and the team itself. Now, the downside of that is that we've taken so much time to find those people. And so it takes a lot of time to find great people, and it takes so much time to hire great people. In this day and time, you kind of like need to hire a lot more because we need to grow the company, we need to hire a lot more. So we're in that like transitional moment where like we're thinking a lot of how do we keep that DNA, but at the same time, the network needs to change because we need to hire more people. But that has allowed us to, have incredibly great retention because we hire people who are deeply committed to the mission more than anything else.
Awesome. I want to do like a quick fire round.
Sure. Let's go.
First question, what is your like hot take when it comes to AI?
I think a lot of AI these days from the market is just a story. I think there's a lot of storytelling and deeply ingrained in some of the biggest research labs. And I think a lot of them see them as research labs, and I sometimes see them as just like storytelling labs.
i.e. lacking substance? Or are you complimenting them that they're great storytellers, or are you saying that?
I think they're great. I mean, they could be both. I don't think, there are all kinds of different labs these days, and you could be a great storyteller with no substance, or you can do both. You can have a lot of great substance and a great story. But I think people have finally understood the power of a great story. You can have great research, but if you don't have a story, no one cares.
Right.
So yeah.
And given that we're at this bar, I have to ask, what's your favorite sci-fi movie?
My favorite sci-fi movie? I really like Kubrick's like 2001 Space Odyssey. I think it's like a masterpiece of science fiction. You haven't seen it? Okay, you have to see Space 2001. Yeah, it's a film I watch every now and then. It's just like it's so ahead of its time. Yeah, it's amazing.
And how do you think the arts or like traditional art content industry is going to look in, let's say, a decade? Do you think there'll be like complete shifts in terms of the way that industry works? Like
traditional arts, or?
Yeah, whether it's art, whether it's film.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think of like taxonomies and categories in like very loose ways, and my sense of change is that it all is just evolving. Art is one continuous human evolution of like expression, and it's very hard to predict what's going to happen over the next couple of years. But I do feel like people are going to start mixing more things in ways that they weren't intended to be mixed. There's many new, I don't know, if you think about like electronic music weren't supposed to be music. It was just like people tinkering with like computers, and suddenly like there's a beat you like, and it kind of became a thing. And now that's a whole genre of like music, right? And there's many things that start with that. We start with tinkering and experimentation, and you're not supposed to do it in one particular way, and suddenly like a new art form like arrives. I care the most about, traditional artists or people with specific craft doing that experimentation. Because if you mix what you already know with something you don't know, then that's where like the greatest like innovations arise from. And I don't have a name for that. I don't know what kind of art. I do feel it's gonna feel like a new art form. I always speak about some of the work that we're doing on Runway as a new camera, because I think the camera itself created new art forms that were completely outside of our mind 150 years ago. Like the thing that even though we're in a bar surrounded by things that are coming from films, if you show this to someone 150 years ago, it would be completely impossible for them to predict, right? Like filmmaking is a new art form. It's the seventh art. I think a lot of it will feel very similar in the next couple of years, where we're at the beginning of a new art form altogether.
And if people in Japan are interested in joining Runway or want to learn more, what's the best way to reach out for them?
Just email me or send us an email, just japan@runway.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming, and it's always good to see you in Tokyo.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great chatting.